See, it should come on. We're live. Marianne Rose, welcome.
Hello. Hello.
Who's that on your left?
That would be the real Hamish McGruff.
Oh, I see.
Wanting to join in.
He's big. He's got natural colour on his head.
So he's a miniature schnauzer, would you believe? And we cut him a mohawk and then we dye it red. So he has this fancy little hairdo that loves to entertain the local children in the neighbourhood. So yeah, he's a bit of a character.
So this is the one where you say here he's a mischievous little scruff who thinks he is tough. He's not afraid of croaking frogs or spiders and snails underneath logs. And he's ever so brave out in the ocean with his big rolling waves. When the storm clouds roll in, thunder crashes, lightning crackles, Hamish whimpers and hides. He's afraid of the dark, and crashes and booms are terribly scary. Can a friend help Hamish come up with a plan for the next thunderstorm? A delightful story about friendship and finding the courage to overcome fear. So he doesn't is he really scared of thunder, is he?
Yeah, when he was a puppy, I think maybe I'll just let him go and get the treats. When he was a puppy, I think like all dogs, strange noises always get them a little bit upset and timid, and and a little bit scared, of things like fireworks and thunderstorms. And so and you can probably tell from his haircut, a really adventurous, full of attitude kind of. He's more like a toddler than a dog sometimes, so full of personality and full of beans. But that was the one thing that was always very sensitive for him, and we actually ended up playing him a lot of music of fireworks and low noises of like sirens and ambulances and police cars when he was a puppy, so he could overcome his fear.
Oh, okay.
So I had then the idea of when I made a children's book, that I could tell a little story about a little doggy overcoming his fears.
Good, wonderful. So I'm welcoming you with a glass of whiskey. What did you have there? Something red.
Oh, I have a Tassie Pinot Noir that I've just had arrive today. I was actually down in Hobart for the Taste of Summer Festival over the New Year's period, and thought I'd pick myself up a few cheeky bottles.
Because our mutual publisher, Karen McDermott, says that your ceilings are red, but not from paint.
Yes, true story. So one of my sidelines that I picked up as a hobby last year was to make my own red wine. And for anyone that may be interested in doing similar, I don't advise you doing it in your living room. With a drill bit with a thong attached to the end in a bucket, because to separate the grapes from the stems, it just explodes. So fortunately, we were able to make grappa out of some of the wine as well. And for anyone that knows the science of making wine, it does make a really good cleaning product before it actually becomes grappa.
Thanks. Grappa's fearsome stuff. I'm not. I sort of drink Merlot or Shiraz. What actually is a petit pinot? What actually is it?
Yeah, so Pinot Noir is something that you see a lot more of in Victoria and Tassie. It's made in cooler climates than we have over in Perth, so we don't really see a lot of our wine growers make it over here. But it's a very soft drinking wine, and it's a very nice way if you have somebody who's not really into red wines as a sort of easy, mellow introduction to wines. And it is great for hot weather because you can have it slightly, dare I be sacrilegious and say chilled, slightly chilled on a summer day, and it's just mellow and delightful.
Like for breakfast?
Maybe not for breakfast. Maybe with a bit of cheese after dinner.
Oh, I see. But Marianne, this is not you've got it like a day job, okay?
I do. So children's book writing is not my day job. Being a corporate lawyer is my day job, and I am in banking law, and have been working with one of the top 4 banks for the last couple of years. And I've also worked with a couple of boards and not-for-profits in this space as well. So I wear a very different hat during the day compared to the evenings when I get a chance to do a bit of writing. But I feel like the common thread is definitely the love of language and reading and writing, because I'm a contracts lawyer, and contracts lawyers are all about the words and the semantics, and you've got to have a passion and a love of language to be able to really enjoy being in that space.
Have you ever written a contract where the lines rhyme?
Oh, now that's a very cheeky little little idea that you could. No, I haven't. I must say, but
make them rhyme, and then a little. Watch when they read it and go, huh?
I don't think very many people read the contracts. I feel like that's always the downside, is they tend to reside in the bottom drawers. I should never say that. That's not where they should reside, but that is the laughing running joke that us lawyers have, is that sometimes the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet is where the contracts end up.
But you drag it out when you need it. Sure. So what sort of led you to the winemaking, if I may ask? I mean,
well, I've actually got a friend of mine that I grew up with in Melbourne. We fortuitously crossed paths here in Perth, and we sort of came from the same industry as well. And he is a big wine drinker and lover of wines, as I am, and we thought it might be a little bit of fun to try a hand at something different. So we headed out to the Swan Valley and hit up a few vineyards and asked if we could get any excess grapes, and then we figured it out and got a lot of, bought some. You just need basic equipment like buckets and bits and strainers and bits and pieces, and you obviously clean all your equipment to sort of make sure it's nice and sanitized. But it's messy but fairly straightforward. So we just thought we would give it a bit of a go, and so we sort of started off with maybe 20 or 30 kilos of grapes, and ended up with quite a bit of liquid out of that, and we were able to make a bit of Shiraz was really what we made, and a little bit of Chardonnay as well, which we are going to be bottling at the start of February, and then at the start of February we're going to be doing it all over again. So we've got our grapes lined up, and hopefully a bit of a better technique, so less of it ends up on the ceiling, and we're going to do a bit more Shiraz this year, and probably increase the volume. So you might end up with a bottle if it's any good drinking.
I have a text here from Max. He says you do it all. You write books, you create wines. That's a good phrase. And I know there are many other hidden talents, including painting, glass blowing, and your day job on top of that as a corporate lawyer. Not to forget actively participating in our community on not-for-profit boards. Wow. Yeah. And Hamish, what a scruffy little rascal. Stylish Mohawk with an attitude to more. Just talent all around.
Well, that's very kind of him. Very kind of him to say.
So what prompted you? Well, let's get back. This is supposed to be a book show.
Yeah, we deviated into wines.
Yeah, well, exactly. Oh, yeah. Before we get back to the book show, is it under what brand name do you sell your books, your wines?
We don't sell them. We make them for private consumption. But if we were to go down the path of selling them, the name is O Rose. So we will see. We will see if we turn it into something a little bit more less hobby and more commercialized. But I think it will depend on whether it's any good this year. But yes, just for personal consumption at this time.
But where are the barrels? Where do you keep the barrels? In your garage?
The barrels are currently in a garage in West Perth.
How many do you
in
have?
big like demijohns and big vats, essentially sitting in a garage
So
waiting to be
how
bottled.
many liters do you have?
Oh gosh, oh my gosh, there'd be more than 50 litres. We've bottled about 40 bottles, and we probably
Yeah.
have enough to bottle at least another 80 bottles at the moment. So that's last year's crop, which I might add, I think I might have mentioned to you when we were chatting before we went live. We actually entered an Italian winemaking competition, and
Okay,
came
yeah,
third in an Italian winemaking competition. So we're always happy to give it a crack.
Good. And where'd you come?
Third.
Third. Well, that's very good. Your first outing. How many people
Yeah.
were in the competition?
There were about 20. So it was a pretty serious,
Oh,
down
right,
at the
very good.
Italian club. It was a pretty serious bunch of people judging. So we had some pretty serious judges doing the blind tasting. So it was just a fun little, like, we were literally putting it into a bottle like 20 minutes before it went to tasting.
Oh, okay. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
A lot of fun. Okay. But so back, what actually triggered you to actually write a book, and particularly a children's book?
Well, I always thought everybody has a book in them, and I firmly believe that. I think everybody has a story that they want to tell, and whether it's crime or a children's book, or exactly some other a romance novel.
No,
And so I always have this feeling of I would like to write a book, and I'd always dabbled just in my own personal time on my laptop, like writing little bits and pieces and stories. And right before I got Hamish as a puppy, which was about 5 years ago, I sort of had this, if I got a dog, I want to call him Hamish McGruff. And I really just liked the name. It was really playful, and there was like a lot of rhyming fun that you could have with a name like that. And then when I eventually did get Hamish McGruff, I just had all these little like funny little rhymes going through my head, and I was like, I really should just jot those down. And then I thought, oh, while I'm jotting these down, maybe I can actually create it and craft a story. And so I essentially put all those little rhymes into the first cut of a story. And then I kind of, when I got to that point, I kind of thought, oh no, actually, like I think I've sort of got a decent story here. I want to, I'd love to give my nephew, who was quite young at the time, I'd love to give him a gift of a story. I'm in a different state. I'm a Melbourne girl, and they're in Melbourne, and I was over here in Perth, and I thought, oh, that'd be a really lovely gift to give to my nephew, who is Sam. A nice little children's book. And so I thought, oh, maybe I can actually turn this into a real book, an actual book, and publish it. And how do you do that? How do you go about meeting the criteria to write a children's book and actually publishing a book? And so then it sort of set me off on this wonderful adventure where last year I was sort of able to have the book, or not last year now, we're in a new year, at the end of 2021, the book was able to be launched with all the COVID shenanigans that were going on. It was actually able to sort of come to the world and come to fruition, but kind of had to have a soft launch and then a bit of a harder launch last year, because as a lot of authors experienced during COVID, there were issues with supply, there was issues with publishing, with getting books from different sources and getting the materials to put books together. Particularly in Perth, it wasn't until really June last year that we could actually travel interstate and actually go out and be adventurous and have social meetings and catch ups with people. And so it wasn't sort of the typical let's have a big pub party to release the book and go around and promote it, because schools weren't really they were nervous about having people in. There was couldn't really have large gatherings of people. So a completely strange time frame in which to bring a book to life.
And how did you find a publisher?
I did a lot of research and I reached out to a lot of people, and it was a little bit fortuitous how I found Karen at Serenity Press. Actually, is that I'd reached out to Kat Fox, who's my illustrator, to be the illustrator for Hamish McGruff, and I was working with her on illustrating the book, and sort of trying to figure out, okay, well, once I have it illustrated, how do I find a publisher? And she actually connected me in with Karen and said, oh, look, I know this lovely lady who also happens to be in Perth, who runs Serenity Press. Let me connect the two of you. And then lo and behold, I got to meet Karen, and it just was the stars aligning. And she was like, oh, we love Hamish McGruff. Let's get him into print. And it was just a really wonderful, fortuitous coincidence. But I think certainly from a publishing perspective, there's sort of a lack of information about how do you publish, who do you speak to, how do you approach them, what should your book look like, what are the rules for writing a book. And with my sort of legal hat on, I did a lot of personal research into what are the rules around writing a children's book. How many pages does it have to be, for example, and how many lines should be on each page, and what are the themes that are significant for children's books, particularly for an Australian audience. And and those themes like courage, which is what this book is about, like they need to be able to resonate with their audience. And so I then also went and did some testing at some local schools and got a few local school kids to read the book and tell me what they think. And they're just a font of knowledge in terms of how they interpret your book. So it was quite a delightful process, but it was certainly daunting. And I feel that you have to, probably one of the best things to do, it's actually about reaching out to people who have gone through the process and saying, oh, what did you do here at this step? Or what was your first step? Because it is a very, it's a bit of a lonely journey if you don't know anyone who's done it before.
It is a bit. I mean, I must say is that, I come from a business background in IT, but, and then I got into writing crime novels, but I can empathize with you as a lawyer, corporate lawyer, is that, you want to see the structure, you know how things sort of work and who to talk to about this or the other thing. So I was intrigued with how you went about doing the research, because obviously with children's books, you go back to like the classics like Dr. Seuss. I mean, if I came to you and said, I got this idea for a children's book, we're going to call it Green Eggs and Ham. You say, Mike, you're crazy. That'll never fly. So what did you actually research? I mean, Dr. Seuss, I guess, would have been up there, but,
Yeah, well, A.A. Milne as well, famous author of Winnie the Pooh. It's actually his birthday today.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, probably typical of, where I sit generationally, I basically hit up Google and I started Googling, how do you publish a book in Australia, and what is the structure of a children's book, and really, some really basic questions like how many pages should a children's book be, and then I basically put together being the typical lawyer, a little spreadsheet of information of who I could contact, who I could reach out to, information about what are the key topics that are taught in schools to children of the age group that this book speaks to, which is, sort of grade 1 to sort of year 5 to year 7.
Wonderful, Marianne. This is from Paula Rose. She's watching us from Melbourne.
That's my mum. Hi, Mum.
Hello, Mum.
But you're like, you have to
That's really interesting. Is
deep
it
dive.
how do you when you took it out for I mean, for my books, I've got like a beta reader or a couple of beta readers.
Yeah.
But I mean, and I give it to them, particularly like because it's like crime. I got one lady who reads it, and she's a detective in the Australian Police Force, New South Wales Police Force actually, and she looks at it from that perspective. And I've got a view of how I write things, and then she comes back and I think, oh man, I missed the boat of it there. When you gave it to the kids to read at the schools, and you obviously had a perspective on how they would have thought about it. Did it work like that, or did they go?
Oh no, it was bonkers. It was completely bonkers. I went and I read at one of the local. I contacted one of the local primary schools and said, "Oh look, can I read to your class?" And they were actually very accommodating and hopefully gave the teacher a bit of a break and gave them some material that they could work with after. But I went and said, okay, kids, I'm going to read you a story. And then after I've read you the story, I'd really like to ask you some questions. And so I read the story and then I asked a few questions like, oh, so what colour was Hamish? And in the book, I described the colour of Hamish, but then the kids just came up with these colours that weren't in the book, or like what colour coat was, the coat that Hamish was wearing as his thunder jacket when he was scared of, to overcome his fear of lightning. They were just coming up with these like random colors and these random events in the book that just hadn't happened and I hadn't said to them, but their imaginations just exploded. And it was really with all of that information that they gave me around how a kid's mind works and all the little ideas that they had that I was then able to weave in to the story. And then the school was really kind enough that they sent me some feedback afterwards where they actually did a little essay that the kids had to do where they had to write feedback about, a review of the book, like what they thought of the book. And I got 30 little readers who gave me their feedback and impressions of the book. And, it was just so delightful to sit and read this information and see the little pictures that they'd drawn as well, which were adorable, of Hamish. But all of them, they interpreted the story differently, but the common theme was they understood it was about friendship. They understood it was about courage and overcoming your fear. And so that really helped sort of confirm that, I had the nub of the story there. And so then I felt like that was the core of my beta testing group, was young school children.
Tweak your story after that?
Yeah, I did a lot of editing and a lot of tweaking, and then I had an editor go through my book as well as Karen, the publisher. And I had a couple of people or adults who were parents of children of that demographic as readers as well to get their feedback in terms of, if you're a parent reading a story to a child, is this the type of story that you like to read? Because it's got to be enjoyable for the parent as well. You want to kind of make up voices and get a bit enthusiastic, and I've got a lot of words like crack and roar and exciting sort of big bold words that you could do a little bit of like a jump scare to a little kid and get them really excited about what's happening, and hopefully as well for kids that might have fears or might be sensitive about a few things, helping them build that resiliency and that courage to overcome them, and using Hamish as an example for that.
That's very good. That's a very good point. That is. Did you think? And did any of the children write back that they were scared of something and this, or they were scared of thunder? Maybe this helped them.
No, I didn't. I didn't have any children tell me that they were scared of thunder, but I did have a lot of parents comment that kids, especially at nighttime, they have. They can go through an age where they have a lot of funny little, niggles, what's under their bed type concerns. And so sort of having books that are about courage and not needing to be fearful and being able to face the world and have adventures, it's actually really sort of exciting for them to imagine that and then have that calmness as they go to sleep.
So did you just go to the one school, or did you go to many, or what did you do?
At the time, I went to one school, and then I went to a couple of friends who had sort of a number of children. And so by the end of it, I probably had about 45 kids as readers. And then I'd sort of had a handful of parents and adults.
It's a very good statistical sample, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I felt that if I'd had any more information, the story would never have gotten off the ground. It would have gone in too many different ways.
Thinking of the 80-20 rule, what were the common themes coming through?
Look, I think back at the time,
I mean, it was the common feedback. Let me say that the common
feedback. So the common theme of the book is courage, but the common theme that the children were talking about was really about Hamish and how much of a good friend he was and how playful he was and what colour his jacket was. So I think kids take very different things out of a book, and sometimes there's a nuance or a subtlety with maybe some of the messaging that they're taking on.
You've mentioned a couple of times the fact is that the children picked up, they all thought he had a different coloured jacket on.
Yeah, but everybody had a different view. Everybody had a different colour. So it was just so interesting to see the spark of imagination, because I think it tells you so much about when you read a story to a child, how it engages their own creativity and their own imagination. And I just feel that is, reading is so important to read to children and read with children.
Yeah.
And it has such a profound effect in terms of, what it sparks off in terms of their own imagination and then their own love of reading and literature and building those skills that are just so important.
And what colour was his jacket?
Oh no, that's the secret. you gotta read the book to find out. Did you show? I don't know if you had the book in the background, but that's...
I meant to ask you to hold it up. Yeah.
Hamish McGruff, The Lightning and the Thunder Jacket.
Yeah, I know. I've seen it there in Karen's office. I was supposed to be with you today and get a copy for you, but anyway.
Oh no, I've got a stack of them on my shelf.
Okay. What's your next book? What's happening next?
Very interestingly, this took a long time to basically come to life. So the actual process from a writer to publishing a book, I mean, it was essentially a 4-year journey for me. So it wasn't quick at all. It was one that required a lot of persistence.
It's a bit like getting a law degree, isn't it?
Oh my God, it was very much like getting a law degree. And I kind of felt as well that I didn't want to write another book at the time until I sort of had seen, what was the process like? What's the end result? What does the tangible physical book look like? And then when I received it, it was during COVID. And, I think like a lot of creative people, some of us lost our mojo a little bit during COVID. We had other concerns and other life demands going on. And so my creativity kind of stalled quite a bit during COVID. And so I would have loved to have said that I, wrote something and had lots of ideas last year, but I feel like my creativity really stagnated. And I think when I think about it, where I get a lot of my enthusiasm and energy from is from things like interacting with people, traveling, being exposed to different experiences. They're the sort of things that energize me. And I think for me to have gone away over the holiday period and drunk a bit of wine in Tassie, eaten some nice food, come back sort of recharged and refreshed. And, I'm also going away this weekend. I'm taking another sneaky little break before we get really truly into the work year. I feel like that's probably what I need from a creative perspective to sort of, energize and ramp up the juices. And then I'd really like to write another one because I now have a niece, and I really want to be able to give her the same gift that I gave my nephew, and write a Hamish story for her. But I think that I'd probably have to approach it slightly differently, because where with the first one I had those rhymes and those themes running around my head, with the second one, and I don't know, maybe you've experienced this too, but it's harder coming up with, what is the story, what is the theme. And the theme that I would like to write on is around kindness. But how you then, having chosen a theme, create a story, I think that I think you described me as a was it a plotter? Is how you describe people
So there's two types of what they call. One's called a plotter, who has a plot, like a storyboard on a wall, on a whiteboard, and the other one is called a pantser. In other words, they write by the seat of their pants.
Yeah. Well, I think that I would be a plotter. So I think that I need to, sit down, dedicate some time to it, and try and craft that story, and then that will be the next one. But I must say, I'm a little bit surprised that my book that came out is a children's book, because I don't have kids. I just have nieces and nephews. But like when as a reader, I love crime, and I love thrillers, and I'm a big reader of that type of genre. And it's really interesting that the genre that you read and you might love is not necessarily the genre that works for you as a style to write in.
But when you went to write it, I was interested in that you like a plotter, because I think that's probably because I'm shooting in the dark here, whether that's back to your legal work that you do, is everything's like structured.
Yeah. Look, I think that that's probably true. As a lawyer, there's a lot of research, and there's Hamish agreeing. There's a lot of research and planning that goes into the work that you do. And so you write a draft, and you write notes, and then you mold it, and then you rewrite it, and then you rework it, and then you add in new information. So it's an iterative process where it just becomes more fleshed out and more concrete as you test the logic, test the sentences, test the rhymes. And I feel that that's probably consistent with being a bit of a plotter, because it's about how does a story flow, and then rewrite. How does the story flow? Rewrite. Switch the sentences.
That's what you do in law, don't you?
It is completely. It's and completely true. Of writing a contract. Here, there, cut, paste, redraft. I don't like this. Red pen it.
So, but a question: how did you decide what rhyming method you would use for?
Oh my God, are there rhyming methods?
Yeah,
that's maybe something I don't know about.
No, but here I'm reading this here. Is a mischievous little scruff who thinks he is tough. There's the rhyming there.
Yeah, there's like a pentameter of sound, and I suppose it's the rhyming sounds that I felt were fun and playful to my ear, and the sounds that were fun and playful that I enjoyed reading. And I feel like you were talking about Dr. Seuss earlier. Those sort of it's almost like music. It has a beat to it, and you can play with the poetry of the words, and that's always appealed to me in terms of it's fun and it's playful. It might be a bit of an older style in terms of writing of children's books, which I think are probably a little bit more. They've modernized, the style has changed, but the style that I wanted was something that was reminiscent of my childhood, which was there's an innocence there, and there's a playfulness there, and there's a musicality there that I personally really like.
Okay, so that's really interesting. So the next book is you still haven't. It's going to be about kindness. You say that's your
So it'll be Hamish McGruff story, and I'm thinking at this time that the theme will be kindness, and I'll have my little niece in it, so it'll be Sam and Harriet, and then it's just about what kind of adventure does Sam, Harriet, and Hamish McGruff go on, and what can they learn around kindness and being kind to each other. And I've tested a few ideas, and I must say a few ideas have gone in the bin. So there's been a bit of like playing around the edges, but yeah, I feel like this could be the year for a little bit of bit more creativity.
But do you think it'll be a bigger story, or do you think you got the format right on how many pages you want to have?
There's definitely rules with children's books as to pages and what, this is a little bit of statistics, what statistically works. So I do feel that I have the structure right and the form right, and I definitely have the illustrator right, because shout out to Kat Fox. She just did amazing illustrations that really brought Hamish to life. So I feel that it is, the issue for me will be, what is the story? What is the crux of the story? What is the crux of the adventure? And then it will be, once I know the plot, how do I then create the rhyme around the adventure? So I think that's probably the thinking that needs to happen. So if anyone has any brilliant ideas about what adventure they'd like to see Hamish go on next, by all means, we're on at Hamish McGruff on Instagram. So just hit me up and let me know what you'd like to see.
As well, is he?
He is. So Hamish goes to kindergarten on a Wednesday. So he's actually been there today.
Yes, to what?
He goes to kindy. He goes to kindy like any good toddler. So he goes to a wonderful, I'll just give Canine Collective in Bayswater, just an amazing group of people. I'm happy to give them a shout out. He just loves it. Like every time I take him, I open the door and it's not even a backward glance. It's like a run straight in. I'm off to have the adventure of my life. He loves it. So, and I do think that from a socialization perspective, it's just excellent socialization for anyone that's got a little pet. But he just loves it, and has come home exhausted. And we do a little school run. So his little doggy friend, Dylan, who's a little black cavoodle, goes to daycare with him. And I pick up Dylan and Hamish at the end of the day, and they're now I would say they're having a play, but I think that they're actually having a sleep in the lounge room at the moment after a big day playing at kindy.
This is so funny.
Because us dog lovers, I mean, we're very passionate people.
How many dogs are at this doggy kindergarten?
Oh, look, there had to be, it was like a class size. There had to be at least 15 of them there today.
Wow.
So
but you have a lot of material there for like another story.
Yeah. That's true. The doggy daycare could be the story.
There we go. Doggy daycare.
Yeah.
That'd be a great time.
Oh gosh, they love it. They just have so much fun. And he gets a lot of material for his Instagram page from daycare.
Graph a doggy daycare. There we go. I think that'd be a good one to go with. Okay, but how do you find fitting it in there with the wine and the law and not to mention all the time doggy daycare takes up. squeezing in there somewhere to write another children's book. How do you manage to fit it all in?
I think that there are some people that it's like you give a task to a busy person, and I probably fit into that category. I like trying my hand at new things, and I am one of those people that I just constantly, whether it's new food or a new experience, you name it, I just want to give it a go. And so I just find that sometimes I have more hours in my day and I think, oh, I've got a wonderful amount of time. Let's try something new. So, I mean, look, there is obviously a little bit of tension with that, because obviously being a corporate lawyer and being on boards is very time consuming, but you need to carve out time to be creative. And I think that your ability to be creative and have that self-care of spending time being creative, it's so important to your ability to then be successful in what you do in your day job.
But have you given thought to maybe going to, not saying going beyond, but to write a children's book, like a book, a children's,
look, I'm not sure when I.
Story.
Yeah, look, I'd like to write more, and I'm probably one of those people where I probably would need to schedule in the time to do it, or go away for a weekend and spend a weekend, hunkered down, with a good bottle of wine and a laptop and do some writing. But I think you've got to make time for it. And I feel that particularly with COVID, there was, during the pandemic, there were a lot of people who just didn't have the headspace to think creatively or, take the time, because, we had other, challenges going on in our life. And I think that was probably true for me. And so now that, we're sort of 3 years in, the world has normalized, life is getting back to post-COVID normality, we can start scheduling that time to make time for that fun and creativity, and we can start doing those things that energize us and get us going. And so I do feel that there's another book there. Just have to get into gear and make it happen.
You know how you do it? You write a word, and then you do another word, and then you do another word.
Well, I know a lot of people do write 100 words a day. That's the challenge. It doesn't matter what you write, but you just sit in front of your computer and you've got to just write 100 words. And there's little tricks like that people have.
Little tricks like that, and I think the famous Irish author Dylan Thomas, because there's a lot of thoughts about that you should churn out 2,000 words a day. And I've given that
that's a bit much.
So much effort to try and unscramble. It's like if you had to do a contract and you just went blah, 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 blah. The editing would be horrific, okay? So, and they ended up, so Dylan Thomas was on the way to the pub, as what he normally did, and he had a bit of a problem. And they asked him, said, Dylan, how many words did you write today? He said, 7. But they were all good words. So I'm in that camp. If you write 7 good words, that's fine. That's a good day.
Well, I think sometimes just getting in front of the computer and just giving yourself that time to think and say, this is my creative time or this is my writing time, I think it's really important and valuable. And I don't know how it is with your process, but for me, it didn't matter what I wrote first up, because the first cut is not what made it through. There was so much editing and rewriting of the same sentence that went over and over again. But I think it's just carving out that initial framework and that initial idea.
I'm a mixture of a plotter and a pantser. I have a bit of a plot and I start off, and my characters get a life of their own.
Oh, really?
I think, how's this happening? Maybe we've had too many whiskies. I don't know where this is coming from. But that's just in the morning,
And were you always like that? Like when you first started writing, or has your style changed over time?
No, I've always been like this. So you know that person at the dinner table when you have a dinner party, who takes over and starts telling stories, and you can know where he's going with the story, and halfway through the story he goes and writing else to another story, and then off to another story. You know that person. That's me.
The storyteller.
Can we come back to this? Yeah, I've always been a storyteller. So can you come back to what you were telling the video? I go, what? So it doesn't make sense unless I tell them all the other bits.
So is that how you write as well?
Yeah, I do. I write like that as well.
You just must have so much material that to edit down must just be like.
No, you've got to be careful about that. And I think it's something for you to think about as well. Is you can hold up your whole production process.
Yeah.
Is that you write so much. I won't say crap, but it's like a morass of stuff, and it's like a lot of stuff, and you can't you got to think. I mean, I know myself. I mean, my wife criticized me because she says I must stop trying to be clever because on the first pass I don't generally tend to get it right. She says, because when I read a lot of what other famous writers have done with techniques in that, and she says, and I must stop doing that.
Well, I think everybody finds their own style that works for them.
Well, the word they use is voice. You must find your own voice.
Yeah,
that's the word they use. That's,
having said that, though, I do think that with creativity, there is fun in playing around with different voices and different styles. Because I certainly think that if I were to write, for example, for a young adult audience, or if I was to write a crime novel, I mean, the voice would be stylistically different, and who you are as the protagonist and your attributes would be different, and so you would write in a different style and a different voice as well, I think.
No, I would agree. Well, on that wonderful note, I think we should, but I still like the idea of you creating contracts that rhyme.
Well, I might let you know if I end up with any. You might see them around.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you so much for having me. I loved it.
Bye.
Bye.